Hi, welcome to Zydoxa. Now, today we're going to be starting a series of videos. Now, with Jeffery Epstein being in the news, with the files and the lists and all that, and the Trump administration not releasing anything and saying there's nothing to see here, so it got me to thinking. I don't really know a great deal about Jeffery Epstein's life from when he was born. I know about his crimes. He's also one of the most, I'd say, worldwide infamous faces and names out there. So we're going to be starting this series looking at Jeffery Epstein's life. We'll get into his crimes, but that will be in much later episodes of the series. So, Jeffery Epstein was born Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and he was born on the 20th of January 1955 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents were Pauline Stolowski, I hope I've said that right, who died in 2004. And his father was Seymour George Epstein, who died in 1991. And they were married in 1952, and Jeffrey came along not long after. Jeffrey was the oldest of two children, and he has a brother called Mark. His mum worked as a school aide, and his dad worked as a groundskeeper for the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. He was brought up in a working class gated community of Seagate in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York. So he didn't come from a rich background or anything like that. His parents worked very hard to try and give Jeffrey and his brother the best start that they could have. The neighbours of the family described the Epstein family as very gentle, polite people, very nice, would always help out. There was nothing that stood out about them. They just got on with their lives. So, Jeffrey, his school days, he attended local public schools. First, Public School 188, and then Mark Twain Junior High School. He was actually known to earn money tutoring his classmates in mathematics. And these classmates remember that they used to call him Epi, and he was seen as a quiet, smart, overweight, but sweet lad. Didn't really stand out. Wasn't part of the in crowd or anything like that. Now, in 1967, Epstein attended National Music Camp at Interlochen Centre for Arts and was regarded as a very talented piano player. As I've recently found out, he actually learnt the piano from the age of 5. He graduated Lafayette High School at the age of 16 after skipping 2 grades in 1969, and that same year he attended Cooper Union studying advanced mathematics, and then changed colleges in September 1971, where he attended Current Institute of Mathematical Sciences at New York University, studying mathematical physiology. But he left there in June 1974, and he never received his degree. He had no qualifications, even though he was supposedly this mathematical genius. Now, in September 1974, he was the age of 21. He started teaching mathematics and physics at the Dalton School on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, even though he had no teaching qualifications. At this school, it's reported that Epstein showed inappropriate behaviour towards underage teenage girls. He was known to flirt with female students and even showed up to parties where young people were drinking. So this was the first sign of his interest in young females. And it was at this school where Epstein became acquainted with the chief executive of Bear Stearns, the bank, and this was Alan Greenberg. In fact, it was Alan Greenberg's daughter, Lynn Copel, who said that Epstein actually influenced another student's parent to advocate for him to Greenberg. And it's from there that in June 1976, Epstein was dismissed from the Dalton School for poor performance. So, having been acquainted with Alan Greenberg, he then received a job with Bear Stearns. He started off as a low-level junior assistant to a floor trader. He then moved quickly up the ranks to become options trader in the special productions division. He then moved further up to advising the bank's wealthiest clients on tax mitigation strategies. Epstein was praised by the bank's later CEO, Jimmy Kane, on his skill with wealthy clients and complex productions. And it was in 1980 that Epstein became a limited partner with Bear Stearns. However, Epstein left Bear Stearns quite abruptly in 1981, and according to Epstein, it was for being guilty of a Regulation D violation. Now, that meant nothing to me, so I looked it up, and a Regulation D violation is a Federal Reserve rule that governs reserve requirements for banks and other financial institutions to follow. Now, even though Epstein had left Bear Stearns, he remained close to Kane and Greenberg and was a client of Bear Stearns up until it collapsed in 2008. In August 1981, Epstein founded his own consulting firm, and it was called International Assets Group Incorporated, or was known as IAG, which he assisted clients in recovering stolen money from fraudulent brokers and lawyers. Epstein described his work at this time as a high-level bounty hunter, and he worked sometimes as a consultant for governments and the very wealthy to recover embezzled funds, and other times worked for clients who had embezzled funds. It was also at this time that Epstein told people he worked as an intelligence agent, and that through the 1980s, Epstein possessed an Austrian passport with his photo on it, but a false name. This passport showed his place of birth as Saudi Arabia. In fact, in 2008, the US Attorney Alexander Acosta, who handled Epstein's criminal case at that time, was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone as Epstein was above his pay grade. It was in the 80s that one of Epstein's clients was a Saudi businessman called Adnan Khashoggi. Now, Khashoggi was one of several defence contractors Epstein knew, and they were middlemen in transferring American weapons from Israel to Iran. And in the mid-80s, Epstein travelled a lot between the US, Europe and the Middle East. And while in London, Epstein met Stephen Hoffenberg. They were introduced by John Mitchell, a former US attorney. And in 1987, Stephen Hoffenberg hired Epstein as a consultant for his company, Towers Financial Corporation. Now, this is not to be confused, it's not related to a company of the same name bought by Old National Bancorp. Now, this company was a collection agency that bought debts owed to hospitals and phone companies. And Epstein and Hoffenberg then changed their business strategy to corporate raiders and used Towers Financial as their raiding vessel. It was during this time, 1987, 1988, that Epstein unsuccessfully tried to take over Pan American World Airways and Emory Air Freight Corps. In 1993, Towers Financial Corporation was exposed of one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history after losing over $450 million of its investors' money. Hoffenberg claimed that Epstein was involved with the scheme, but because Epstein left Towers Financial in 1989, he was never charged for his involvement in the massive investor fraud. In 1988, while Epstein was consulting for Hoffenberg, he founded his financial management firm called J. Epstein and Company. Epstein said he had founded this company to manage the assets of clients that had more than $1 billion in net worth. One of the publicly known billionaire clients of Epstein was Leslie Wexner, who was the chair and CEO of L Brands and Victoria's Secret. Between meeting Wexner in 1986 and 1995, Epstein had become a director of the Wexner Foundation and Wexner Heritage Foundation and became president of Wexner's Property. Epstein made millions in fees by managing Wexner's financial affairs and would often host Victoria's Secret fashion models at his New York City home and would help aspiring models get work with Victoria's Secret. In 1996, Epstein changed his company name to the Financial Trust Company and based it on the island of St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands for tax advantages. By using the US Virgin Isles as a tax haven, Epstein was able to reduce his federal income tax by 90%. Now, between year 2000 and 2008, Epstein invested in a number of hedge funds, for example, DB Swern, I think I've said that correctly, Special Opportunities Fund, and the Bear Stearns High Grade Structured Credit Strategies Enhanced Leverage Hedge Fund. That was a mouthful. On both of these occasions, it's believed that Epstein lost his investments when they collapsed. So looking back, from leaving the Dalton School as a teacher in 1987 and the time of his death in 2019, Epstein invested a lot of money, embezzled a lot of money, and saved a lot of money. His overall wealth is not publicly known, and some speculate that Epstein actually exaggerated his wealth and that he wasn't as wealthy as he made out to be. There is no doubt that just through payments for his services, Epstein was far from poor, but just how much he was worth is unknown. Now, also looking at his intelligence connections, some people speculate that he wasn't actually part of intelligence. It was just that he told enough people that he was, that he then became known as being part of intelligence. Or was he actually part of the intelligence services? What are your ideas on this? Please leave a comment below. And in part 2, we will be looking at Ghislaine Maxwell and her connection to Epstein and how they ended up together. So please stay tuned. There will be other stories in between, but part 2 will be coming soon. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.